my wife shouted. You're lucky I even looked at you, I replied, and you'll spend years regretting that. The words hung in the air between us, colder and sharper than the January night in Madrid. Her face, usually a perfect mask of practiced charm, was twisted with a sneer. Our friends, or rather, her friends, stood around us on the rooftop terrace, their champagne glasses frozen halfway to their lips. They were a pack of wolves, and they'd just seen their alpha stumble. But she hadn't stumbled. She had thrown a grenade, expecting me to crumble into dust. She didn't know I was the one who had built the bunker and laid the mines. To understand how we arrived at that precipice, you have to go back 6 months, to a time when I still believed our life was a fortress, not a stage. 6 months earlier, our life was, by all external measures, perfect. I was Javier, an architect who had built a successful firm from the ground up. Our penthouse in the Salamanca district was a testament to that success, with floor-to-ceiling windows that drank in the Madrid skyline. My wife, Elena, was the masterpiece I had placed within it. She was beautiful, effervescent, the kind of woman who could make a room feel empty just by leaving it. I had met her when my firm was still a fledgling dream. She'd claimed to love my ambition, my drive. I, in turn, loved her fire. I worked tirelessly to give her the world she said she wanted. Summers in Marbella, winters in Bequera, a wardrobe filled with labels I couldn't even pronounce. I thought I was building a life for us. I was mistaken. I was merely funding a lifestyle for her. The first cracks were small, almost invisible. A casual comment at a dinner party. Oh, Javier is so wonderfully predictable. You always know he'd rather be looking at blueprints than at a dance floor. It was delivered with a dazzling smile. So everyone laughed, including me. But it was a jab, a small assertion of her superiority. Then came the spending. It had always been extravagant, but it became reckless. A vintage Chanel bag appeared one week, a diamond tennis bracelet the next. When I gently questioned a particularly large credit card bill, her eyes went cold. Are you putting a price on my happiness, Javier? I thought we were past that. I backed down, as I always did, telling myself that this was the price of keeping the fire in her alive. The real shift began with the introduction of Ricardo. He was an old family friend of hers, she explained, from a lineage of old money that looked down on self-made men like me. Ricardo was everything I wasn't, effortlessly charming, idle, and dripping with inherited status. He didn't build things, he owned them. Elena began mentioning him more and more. Ricardo took his family to the Maldives on a whim. Can you imagine being that spontaneous? Or, Ricardo says this restaurant is dead. We should have gone to the new place he recommended. Each mention was a comparison, a subtle erosion of my value in her eyes, and, I suspect, in the eyes of our social circle. I felt like a sturdy, reliable station wagon being constantly compared to a flashy, impractical sports car. She was making it clear which one she'd rather be seen in. I tried to ignore it, burying myself deeper in my work, the one place where my worth was measured in solid, tangible results, not in socialite gossip. I told myself it was a phase, that she was just bored. It wasn't boredom. It was ambition. The discovery came on a Tuesday. I had a major project deadline, a museum design that had consumed me for months. We won the bid ahead of schedule, and my partners insisted I go home early to celebrate. I walked into our apartment, the key turning silently in the lock. The air was still. I expected to find Elena out for one of her long lunches with her friend, Sophia. But then I heard her voice, a low murmur from our bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I stopped, my hand still on my briefcase. Her tone was light, conspiratorial, the one she used when sharing a delicious secret. Honestly, Sophia, he's just a workhorse, she said, and a laugh tinkled through the air. My blood went cold. A means to an end. Ricardo understands real living. He appreciates a woman like me. There was a pause. I could imagine Sophia on the other end, nodding, encouraging. I just need to play my cards right for a few more months, Elena continued, her voice dropping to a strategic whisper. His lawyer was an idiot with the prenup. It's weak on the business assets, especially after 5 years of marriage. Once the divorce is finalized, Ricardo and I can finally be together properly. He's promised me a villa in Soto Grande. A means to an end. A stepping stone. The words didn't just hurt. They re-engineered my entire reality. Every sacrifice I had made, every long night at the office, Every moment I had chosen work over rest. It had all been fuel for her escape plan. She wasn't my partner. I was her project. The worst part was the casual cruelty of it. He has no taste, you know? This entire apartment. It's so sterile. It's like living in one of his buildings. She was mocking the very home I had designed with her in mind. The life I thought we were building together. I backed away from the door as silently as a ghost. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. The rage was there, a white-hot furnace in my chest, but it was contained by a sudden, chilling clarity. A confrontation would give her power. It would allow her to play the victim, to twist my anger into abuse, to cry and manipulate her way to an advantage. No, an architect doesn't demolish a building with a sledgehammer. He studies the blueprints, finds the load-bearing walls, and places the charges with precision. Elena had just handed me the blueprints to her own destruction. I went to my study, closed the door, and sat in the dark, watching the city lights of Madrid begin to twinkle. My city, my work, my life. And I began to draw up a new design. The next morning, I was a different man. The hurt had receded, replaced by a cold, methodical purpose. I went to the office, greeted my colleagues with my usual professional warmth, and spent the first hour of my day not on work, but on research. I found the name of the most ruthless divorce lawyer in Madrid, Mateo Vargas. They called him the surgeon because he dismantled marriages with clinical precision, leaving no scars on his clients but financial ruin for their opponents. I booked a consultation for that afternoon. Mateo was a small, impeccably dressed man with eyes that saw everything. I laid out the situation, omitting no detail, including my own naivety. I didn't want pity, I wanted a strategy. He listened without interruption, his fingers steepled. When I finished, he gave a slight nod. "She has made a classic, arrogant mistake," he said, his voice a dry rasp. "She underestimated you. We will use that. From this moment on, you are the loving, slightly oblivious husband. You will give her nothing to suspect. No arguments, no coldness. You will be attentive. You will even be generous. We will give her the rope, and she will braid her own noose." The plan had 3 phases. Phase 1, evidence. I hired a private investigator Mateo recommended, a former intelligence officer who was discreet and thorough. Within a week, I had a file containing photographs of Elena and Ricardo. Not just lunches, but clandestine meetings at a boutique hotel outside the city. Kisses in his car. Intimate gestures that spoke of a long-running affair, not a new fling. I also installed discreet monitoring software on our home network, as per Mateo's instructions. The recordings of her phone calls with Sofia became a library of her deceit, each conversation a nail in her legal coffin. Phase 2, asset protection. This was my area of expertise. Architecture is about structure, and so is finance. I met with my business partners and our corporate lawyers. We legally restructured the firm. My majority ownership was transferred into a newly created, multi-layered, irrevocable trust. My name was still on the door, but on paper, my personal assets were now almost entirely separate from the company's value. It was a complex, expensive maneuver, but it rendered the weakness in the prenup utterly irrelevant. She was going after a vault that, legally speaking, was already empty. Next, I began the slow, meticulous process of separating our finances. I opened new personal accounts. I systematically moved funds from joint accounts to my own, carefully documenting each transfer with a legally sound justification. Mateo guided me every step of the way. I was building a financial fortress, brick by invisible brick. Phase 3, the stage. She wants a public life, Mateo had said. So we will give her a public ending. Elena, feeling more confident than ever, started pushing for a lavish party to celebrate our 5th anniversary. "We have to do something spectacular, Javier," she'd insisted. "To show everyone how happy we are." The dramatic irony was so thick I could barely breathe. I agreed instantly. I told her to spare no expense. She took that as a sign of my capitulation, my renewed devotion. In her mind, I was the tamed workhorse, finally ready to perform for her friends. For 2 months, I lived a double life. I was the doting husband at home, bringing her flowers, complimenting her dresses, listening to her endless stories about Ricardo, whom she still presented as a harmless acquaintance. But in the quiet hours, I was a general planning a war, reviewing reports from the PI, signing documents with Mateo, and watching my financial walls grow higher. Elena's arrogance blossomed under my feigned compliance. She became bolder, her insults more direct, her flirting with other men more overt. She was testing my boundaries, and finding none, she assumed I was simply too weak or too stupid to see what was happening. She didn't know that my silence was not submission, it was observation. I was gathering data. Every condescending remark, every dismissive wave of her hand, was another piece of evidence for my own private tribunal. The final piece fell into place a week before the party. My investigator discovered that Ricardo was not just a wealthy heir, he was a married wealthy heir. His wife was the daughter of a powerful industrialist in Barcelona, a woman with a reputation for being even more ruthless than Mateo Vargas. Ricardo wasn't planning a new life with Elena. He was having a cheap thrill, and Elena was too blinded by the glare of his old money status to see it. And so we arrived at the rooftop party. She was magnificent, dressed in a shimmering silver gown that I knew cost more than my first car. She glided through the crowd, her laughter echoing against the city lights. She gave a toast, her voice dripping with saccharine sentiment. "To my wonderful husband, Javier," she said, raising her glass to me. "Who worked so hard to give me this beautiful life?" The crowd applauded. I smiled, a calm, neutral expression I had practiced in the mirror. I knew what was coming. Later, she cornered me near the bar, her friends Sofia and Camilla flanking her like ladies-in-waiting. She was high on champagne and adoration. She wanted to fight. She started complaining about the caterer, a flimsy pretext. "It's just so typical of you, Javier. You always choose the sensible option, never the best." I said nothing. My silence infuriated her. She needed a reaction, a confirmation of her power over me. That's when she spat the words. "You're lucky I even looked at you." The silence that followed was absolute. Her friend smirked, waiting for me to crumble. I met her gaze, and for the first time in months, I let her see the coldness behind my eyes. "And you'll spend years regretting that," I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the sudden hush. Her smile froze. It was a small crack in her perfect facade. "What did you say?" "I said you'll regret it," I repeated, stepping closer. "For example, you'll regret it tomorrow morning when you try to use your credit cards." I had them all canceled this afternoon. A flicker of confusion, then annoyance. "Don't be ridiculous, Javier." "I'm not," I continued calmly. "You'll also regret it when you try to go home tonight. The locks on the apartment have been changed. Your things, however, have been packed and moved to a storage unit. My lawyer has the address and the key. He'll be in touch." The blood began to drain from her face. Sofia took a step back. "You can't do that," Elena hissed. "I can. It's my apartment, just as the firm is my firm. You'll regret trying to claim half of it, by the way. You see, the assets you were counting on were moved into an irrevocable trust 2 months ago. Your claim is on my personal salary, which, after my legal fees, won't be very much." Panic was now blooming in her eyes. This was not in her script. "You're lying. You're trying to scare me." "Am I?" I looked past her, to Sofia. "Sofia, do you remember your phone call with Elena on the afternoon of October 12th? When she explained her entire plan to you? The plan to divorce me and take the business assets to start a new life with Ricardo." Sofia went pale, looking like she was about to be sick. Elena stared at me, her mouth opening and closing silently. "And speaking of Ricardo," I said, delivering the final, surgical cut, "you'll certainly regret pinning your hopes on him." I took the liberty of sending a package to his wife in Barcelona. It contains a full report from my investigator, complete with photographs from their little stays at the Hotel Valdepalacios. I believe her father is on the board of Ricardo's company. I imagine that will be an uncomfortable conversation. I pulled out my phone. "But you don't have to take my word for it. As for your plan, I have the recording of that conversation right here. Shall we play it for everyone? I'm sure your friends would love to hear about your true ambitions." The rooftop was dead silent. Every eye was on us. Elena looked from my phone to the horrified faces of her friends, her social armor disintegrating in real time. She had wanted a public spectacle. I had given her one. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the wreckage of the life she thought she had so cleverly secured. I didn't look back. The aftermath was exactly as Mateo had predicted, swift and brutal. Her phone call started that night, a frantic barrage of texts and voicemails that cycled through the 5 stages of grief in a matter of hours. First came denial and anger. "You're a monster, Javier. You'll pay for this." Followed by bargaining. "Please, we can fix this. I made a mistake." Then depression, "My life is over." And finally, a pathetic attempt at acceptance disguised as a threat. "Fine. I don't need you. Ricardo will take care of me." I never replied. I blocked her number. Her attempt to fight me in court was a farce. Mateo presented the evidence with cold, dispassionate efficiency. The investigator's photos, financial records of her secret bank account, and, as the centerpiece, the audio recordings. The judge listened to the clip of her calling me a stepping stone with a stony expression. Her case collapsed. The prenup was upheld. The trust was untouchable. She walked away with a settlement so small it barely covered her lawyer's bills. The empty accounts she had feared became her reality. Socially, she became a pariah. Ricardo, true to form, dropped her the instant his wife confronted him. His life was dismantled by a divorce far more punitive than mine. He blamed Elena for everything, painting her as a manipulative siren who had trapped him. Her friends, the ones who had smirked at my humiliation, scattered like rats from a sinking ship. No one wanted to be associated with that kind of spectacular failure. She had built her identity on a foundation of my money and her social connections. I had kicked out the first pillar, and the second had crumbled on its own. I heard about her decline in bits and pieces from a former mutual acquaintance. She lost the apartment she'd rented after a few months. She sold her designer clothes and jewelry piece by piece. The last I heard, she was working as a hostess at a restaurant in a less fashionable part of town, a place she once would have refused to even walk past. As for me, the year that followed was one of quiet reconstruction. I sold the penthouse, a beautiful cage filled with bad memories, and bought a smaller, more personal space overlooking the Retiro Park. My work flourished. Freed from the constant, low-grade stress of Elena's disapproval, my creativity soared. My firm won an international award for the museum design. I reconnected with old friends, the real ones who had seen the cracks in my marriage long before I had. About a year after the party, I was walking through the park on a bright Sunday morning. The air was crisp, the sun warm on my face. I saw her. She was sitting on a bench, alone. She looked diminished. The vibrant fire was gone, replaced by a dull, exhausted resentment. Her clothes were cheap, her hair lusterless. She was staring blankly at the families playing nearby. Our eyes met for a fleeting second across the path. I saw a flash of the old hatred, but underneath it was something deeper, the hollow, cavernous ache of regret. The very thing I had promised her. I felt no triumph, no pity, not even anger. I felt nothing at all. She was just a ghost from a past life. I nodded once, a final, silent acknowledgement, and kept walking into the sunlight.